Welcome back. This is still Hebrew Let's Talk. I love that these days I have to find my own way in life. Anyway, here we are speaking about none other than Akothee, okay? So we've had, I don't know why, we've had the same running story for the last couple of weeks. It's been Akothee or the, what's that guy and his wife, the Tahidi High guy?
Abu Mutua.
Yes, it's been a lot of that going back and forth, and today we seem to have picked Akothee. Okay, so Akothee has been known to live her life wildly and loudly, and recently she's been on the bandwagon where she says, I am nobody's, and I repeat, nobody's role model, and none of y'all should try and force your children to look up to me as a role model, because why would you want to have a single mother of 5 as a person who you want your children to mirror, okay? And it's been the same kind of bandwagon, and I think this is her just piping on this particular story because she's telling us about her trip with religion and how short it was and how she does not subscribe to it anymore. The story goes, remember when she told us that her husband used to work in the used to be part of the SDA, and he was then leaving to go to, what is it, Bahamas?
Hawaii.
To the Bahamas, and that whole story of them going together and her having to come back on her own. So same story is when her husband eventually left, her ex-husband now, she was left to actually try and find friends, right? And unfortunately, some of these churches especially have a very interesting code of conduct where you find that the person whose life looks like it's a mess is the person who's left in the dark. And unfortunately for Akothee, she was the one left holding the bag. She's over there with her 3 children, and unfortunately her husband and her are officially divorced, which is already looked at as a sin. Imagine now it's stigmatized. Back then, it's so wild that 10 years ago, people used to look at single mothers like they're plagued. Wild. Anyway, so the friends that she had along with her husband all picked his side. So they all ended up being his friends, and none of them wanted to associate with her. In fact, they looked at her as a sinner who had just been thrown from hell, according to her own words, right? So ultimately, she tried to find other friends outside of this particular circle, and she ended up finding other friends who are of the world, according to how, you know, religious people kind of call it. And so a lot of the people still castigated her and sort of just cast her to the side even more. And she ended up just deciding that there's no point of being in church if these are the kinds of people that you want to make your friends. There is nothing about you that is reeking of holiness or righteousness or goodness, because where would you put me on the side, yet you're trying to emulate the ways of Christ, right? So ultimately she decided she's no longer going to go to church, and she and her kids would wake up in the morning on Saturday and go to some tree and kind of have their own prayer session. Additionally, she said that the music that they used to sing in church would kind of put her in a mind space where she's thinking about all the bad times and all the horrible things that happened during her marriage, and therefore she's just like, I also don't want that kind of energy being seen by my children. Like every time I go to church, I'm in a bad mood, I have things going on, I don't want my children to see that and kind of look at me in that way of being a delicate broken flower. So for that reason, she just decided to cut church out completely. Her mother of course was angry, and she just said, look, do whatever you need to do. Apparently prayer, fasting, the whole works were put in by her mother, but Akothee was just like, nah, I can't do it. And up until now, they still feel like she's a bit of a stranger, but ultimately she made her decisions. She made decisions that were good for her. And this brought me to a position of think about how many people in church especially, and I'm not just speaking about like Christian church, I'm speaking about religious people in general, in these places of worship. They tend to do a funny thing, which is stay away from anyone who looks like they will make them look bad in front of God, or whichever one you're listening to or you follow. You know, religious people always try and make themselves look in this kind of nice bubble of holiness that no one with dirty hands can touch and should come close to it. And unfortunately, you see so many problems. Haven't you been speaking allegedly of all the popes who've done bad things to children? It's now even become a running joke that
her father.
The father and the children, the little boys.
Joy comes in the morning.
Joy comes in the morning. That's horrible. These are now running jokes. Like, we've gone to a point where we're just like, yeah, fathers allegedly tend to do funny things to young boys. And it's become so normalized that we're just like, yeah, that's how it rolls. That's how it is. If you don't want to go be touched by a pastor, don't go to church. We've seen other people who've impregnated young little girls. And you're just like, this is a teenager who came to church. to find God, and you decided to find her a baby. You know, it is hilarious how religious people tend to kind of just look at it and go like, oh no, but you know, he slipped, he fell. May they be forgiven.
Temptation.
It is always the super religious people, always that show you the worst kind of human beings. And I'm not saying every religious person is bad. I'm just saying that, unfortunately, based on the stories that we hear, it's usually the super religious people that are problematic. So I'm like, do you, boo-boo? I mean, you don't have to fully run away from the word of God or whichever other person you listen to, but ultimately, it kind of, the hypocrisy, it shows a lot.
I think many people run to church for refuge.
Yeah,
you run to church to find community, to put all your burdens to the Lord and just, you know, help me out. You know,
surrender.
You're going to find a place of peace and a refuge, and then you get there and you're met with all this, you know, you're being blindsided and you're being cast aside because you don't fit the criteria of what a good Christian woman, a good Muslim woman is, you know. And it's a lot of hypocrisy, if we're being honest.
It is.
You know, people get on their high horse because they fit the criteria. I am a married woman, these are my children, we have a godly household in our small
Religion is
car.
very cliquey.
You
It's
know,
like Mean Girls.
exactly.
You know,
There's a lot
what are we
of
doing?
cliques going on with
Yeah.
church. They're the friends to the
wife of
minister.
the pastor.
They're the choir people. Kwanza the prison worship people have this thing.
My
Kuna
God.
watu wa sound and tech.
My
How
God.
kwanza they're very quick to impregnate your daughters.
Choir
you know.
master, choir master, na youth pastor.
And the thing is, we're not going against one religion.
We are-
This thing is
it's universal.
so universal
Across all religions.
that everyone can relate to what
You
I'm
don't
saying
remember the
right
Buddha
now.
making out with a small boy, telling him to, do you not remember the whole
Kuna the
Buddha?
dancers and they don't like the
God.
people from this other team. It's it's a very cliquey affair. So I do understand Akothee not wanting to be a part of all of that, especially when these people were once your friends. And then as soon as things go murama for you, they're like, get somebody else to do it. You know, go somewhere else with your problems. You're interfering with this, with the juju, with
the holiness.
Exactly. You're
With the aura of godliness.
exactly. Things are not flowing smoothly because you have to worry about your problems when we could be worrying about church banners
Yes,
and
it's
tea
your
and mandazi.
husband who did you dirty.
What?
Yes, it's your husband who wronged you. But he's a man of God.
He's people you know, make mistakes, you know, and I do understand, especially when you're a woman in church.
Yeah.
There's a lot of unfairness that goes around. Everyone is always advocating for this man. You're like, who will stand up for me? Who will say, yes, he did you dirty, he's the one who is wrong, come here, we see you're hurting, we will be there for you. It is a lot. I do understand where Akothee is coming from. If you feel you're in the same situation, don't be quick to just stay around and be everyone's, you know.
Don't be traumatized.
Yeah. Leave the church or find another church or create your own church. Okay, not go as
Okay,
far
maybe
as,
not go a cult way.
yeah.
But like, find solace in people who care for you.
Yeah.